have here, leaders watch the bottom line. If you are leading in any capacity, whether it's in a business, an organization, a company that you own, whether it's a nonprofit or your own home, if you're a leader, you watch the bottom line. Now, I was telling someone this week what I was working on, and they said, well, what do you mean by bottom line? What's the bottom line? Well, okay, so for those who aren't sure, the bottom line is your net profit, hopefully, or your net loss, but it's all of your chart of accounts first of your expenses, and then it's your revenue, your income, and then your expenses, and what is the difference, what is the delta? That's your bottom line. Anyone that watches Shark Tank, for example, knows what a bottom line is. Can I see anyone here that watches Shark Tank? All right, 2 or 3 of you. All right, good. A lot of you. And you're smart people. And in Shark Tank, here's what will happen sometimes. Someone will give a brilliant presentation. They'll have maybe a great-looking product, and then inevitably, someone on the panel will say, well, what's the bottom line? They always ask, what's the bottom line? And then sometimes that person, after a great presentation, will say, well, last year, we turned a profit of $1,500. And they'll go, oh, no, my goodness, get out of here. You're dead to me. Because that's not a profit. That's almost a loss because the bottom line is bad. All right, so Jesus in the Bible talks about the bottom line. Because I'm going to talk about in a few minutes how you and I are God's asset managers. He puts us here to manage his resources. And the Bible has a lot to say about our resources and our money. So I'm going to start here in Luke chapter 16, verse 1. Jesus told his disciples there was a rich man whose manager was accused of wasting his possessions. So he called him in and he asked him, what is this I hear about you? Give an account of your management because you cannot be a manager any longer. All right, wow, that's a tough talk in any workplace. And I want to start with this thought, that leaders watch the bottom line at work. So this is an employment situation kind of that Jesus is talking about. He has someone that is a manager who is not watching the bottom line, Jesus says. So he's fired. And this story goes on and gets even more interesting. But leaders, I have on the screen, watch the bottom line at work. I have had a friend years ago, a good friend, who was this CEO of a nonprofit, but he was looking for a new job, and so he went to interview at another nonprofit, and in the interview, they asked him, what's the bottom line? What is your annual revenue? What are your annual expenses? Have you guys been turning a profit? How are you doing as an organization? Do you know what his answer was? He said, I don't know. Well, you don't know. How can you not know if you're the CEO? This was his answer. We have financial people that watch the numbers. Do you think he got the job? Absolutely not, because leaders watch the bottom line. Leaders know what's happening. I have another really good friend named Mark who took a job as the vice president of risk management for all of Europe for one of the largest banks in the world. And he moved to London with his wife. When he got there, he noticed, as he looked at the bottom line, that something was missing. And he had someone start to investigate. And they found this in London, that they had a very brilliant, one of their risk managers who was a PhD in mathematics, had realized that on every transaction, think about this with me, every transaction, there's a fraction of a cent, right? Whether you're splitting accounts or joining funds, but usually there's fractions of pennies involved in most transactions. And nobody was paying attention to where he thought nobody knew where the fractions of pennies were going. And so for every transaction across Europe, for everything after 2 decimals, he had go to his bank account, all right? And so nobody's watching. These are just 1/10 of 1 cent. Who cares? Who's going to pay attention to that? Nobody was watching the bottom line. The guy's bank account, except Mark noticed, had millions of dollars in it. The guy spent a little while in jail and lost his job, but that's what happened. But leaders watch the bottom line. I think, and I want to say this, whatever capacity that you serve in and work, I want to say that knowing the bottom line of your organization, of your business, of your church, of of your home, whatever capacity you lead in, is your responsibility. Have you noticed that sometimes someone will be a great leader, have a great vision, but then they fail as a leader, or the vision crashes and burns? Why? Because they failed financially. They were not paying attention to the income and the expenses. They weren't watching the bottom line. And maybe you've heard people make an excuse. Don't raise your hand. This is rhetorical. Some people will say, I'm not good with money. Or that's just lame. Or it's not my job. Have you heard people say that? If someone else will watch the bottom line. No. In whatever capacity you are in your business or organization, whatever it is, you need to be concerned about the income and the expenses and the profit or loss of that organization or business. It's just part of your job, not somebody else's job. If you pay attention to the bottom line, even if you're not that high on the totem, if you pay attention and you help the company turn a profit, you will get promoted. You'll be recognized. You'll have favor. You'll get invited to play golf with the owner of the business. That's what's going to happen. They're going to love having you around. If you don't care about the bottom line, if you keep losing the business or company or organization money because you just don't care, you will not be around very long. So Jesus tells a story about this. He tells a story about investments. And this is from the Message Bible. It's a little long, so just settle in. It's really great. I'm going to start at verse 11. Luke chapter 19. Look in your Bibles with me, or it's on the screen. Jesus told this story. There was once a man who descended from a royal house who needed to make a long trip back to headquarters. But first he called 10 servants together, gave them each a sum of money, and instructed them, operate with this until I return. Verse 15, move down. When he came back, he called those 10 servants together to whom he had given the money to find out how they had done. The first said, Master, I doubled your money. He said, good servant, great work. Because you've been trustworthy in a few small things, I'm making you governor of 10 towns. The guy gets a raise and a promotion. Okay, the second said, Master, I made a 50% profit on your money. He said, I'm putting you in charge of 5 towns, another promotion. The next servant said, Master, here's your money, safe and sound. I kept it hidden in the cellar. To tell the truth, I was a little afraid. I know that you have high standards and you hate sloppiness and you don't suffer fools gladly. And the master said to him, you're right, I don't suffer fools gladly. And you've acted the fool. This is a Message Bible. It's pretty raw, isn't it? Why didn't you at least invest the money in securities? So I would have gotten a little interest on it. Then he said to those standing there, take the money from him and give it to the servant who has doubled my stake. So do you see how this one employer here, they're called a servant, does not see that he is a valuable asset to the organization or to this business? I want to remind you today that in whatever capacity you serve, in whatever business organization that you work in, you are a valuable asset. You are made in the image of God and you bring value. And so part of your responsibility is to give your organization or business a return on their investment, an ROI. All right? We invest in things that give a great ROI, don't we, right? If you want tips on stocks, I'm going to give you 2 right now. Tesla and Lucid, all right? Everyone's going electric. Gasoline, what is it today? $8.63. I don't know. It's over $5. We all need electric, so maybe that's where you invest. But we tend to invest in stocks, for example, or bonds that will give us a good ROI. You, as an employee, in whatever capacity, you are an investment that this business or organization is investing in. They say a great employee, that's you, is one who gives a 5 times ROI. That in whatever role you play, you are helping that business or organization make a 5 times return on you. So don't ever miss that part of your role is to watch the bottom line. And people who watch the bottom line at work, they get promoted, they get recognized. This whole story, look in verse 23, is about the man, or the first 2 individuals who watch the bottom line and they're promoted. And everything you do, let me remind you this, bring value. Because you're made in the image of God, never give sloppy work or never not care about the return, about about how your business or company is doing. All right, so I have here, leaders watch the bottom line at work. Here's the second thought. Leaders watch the bottom line at home. And I want to start by just asking you a couple of simple questions. Are you leading your family well financially? Do you have a financial plan for your family? Do you have a financial plan for your future? If you don't, your financial plan is, I hope my lottery ticket hits. If that's your financial plan, it's not a great plan. I'm just going to say that. If your financial plan is, I hope the rapture comes before I retire, that's not a great financial plan. All right, so I'm going to give you, this is just some practical life advice here. Some of this is from Financial Peace University, but I want to share the top 4 financial mistakes that people make at home when managing their finances. 1, poor spending habits. Our thought here is, well, if I have a little bit more, I'll be happy. It just doesn't work that way. Poor spending habits are a result of not having a budget, but that's number 3. Number 2, bad debt. Bad debt is any kind of card, any kind of credit card, for example, is bad debt. A TV on credit, a flat screen, a 90-inch flat screen is bad debt. It's not an appreciating asset. When you take on debt, you're making a couple of big assumptions when you take on bad debt. You're assuming that next year you'll make more than you do this year, right? When you take on debt, you're making this big assumption, that my circumstances will not change, that my job will stay consistent, my health will stay the same, I won't get demoted, I won't lose my job. Bad debt, when you go into debt, you make those assumptions. Number 3, not having a budget. 80% of Americans are living today paycheck to paycheck. 80% of Americans are spending 100% or more of what they make and saving 0. Not having a budget will hurt. Last one here, I have a large car payment. A car, like a flat screen, is not an appreciating asset. A car is a depreciating asset. No matter how much you like it, how fast it goes, it's not an appreciating asset. All right, these are mistakes. Let me give you the 4 most important things, actions you can take today. The first one I have is to create a budget, which means you watch the bottom line. Can I encourage you this? You can do it right now, but we're going to kill the Wi-Fi so you can't, so do it after church. But download the Every Dollar app. My family uses the Every Dollar app. The Every Dollar app tracks every dollar that you spend. If you don't know where your money's going, then first of all, you will never stick to a budget. You'll always spend more than enough. And if you don't know where every dollar is going, you don't know what God is getting or not getting. By the way, we offer Financial Peace University here every few months at the Grove. Sign up for it. It may be the best thing that you do to create a budget and find financial security as opposed to insecurity. Next, I have build an emergency fund. The goal here is $1,000. Like I said, 80% of Americans are living paycheck to paycheck and do not have any money in the bank. So what happens? Do you know that just one $400 bill, one $400 surprise bill will put most Americans into a spiral of debt? For example, if you have no savings and you have an appliance go out, the washing machine quits working, it's $400. So you put it on a card and then you start that spiral of debt. Or let's say your tranny goes, and that's going to be more than $400. Your radiator blows and you don't have the $1,000 saved up. That's just $400 and it starts a spiral of debt. So build an emergency fund. 3, pay off bad debt. So start with the smallest, be a hero. Last one we have here is live generously and tithe. Do you know what I've heard? I've been a pastor quite a while, and I've heard this from so many different people. I hear this: I will tithe when I get out of debt. Can I tell you what I've seen over the years? That day never, ever comes. That person, that family will never get out of debt. Because if you're not giving back to God, if you're not living generous with God, then He has nothing to bless. And so I want to just ask you here, are you setting a financial example for your family? Do your children see that you spend money wisely? Have your children, your family, do they know that you share generously and that everything you have belongs to God? So that brings me to the next thought here. And I have, is your bottom line, is it God's bottom line? In other words, do all the things that you own, at the end of the day, all of your possessions, all of your money, does it belong to you or does it belong to God? I think all of us like the idea of growing the bottom line, right? That's the goal. But very few people like the idea of letting go of the bottom line and living generous with God. I learned a valuable lesson when I was a kid growing up in Africa. So growing up in the bush in Liberia, we lived on a boarding mission school. And for some reason, sports were banned on Sunday. So on Sunday, there was no soccer. That was the only sport we played. There's no soccer, there's no sports on Sunday. And so my twin brother and I, to find something to do in the afternoon, we invited our Sapo tribal friends to play Monopoly with us, all right? And so we're teaching Wall Street economic principles to kids living in the jungle. But we had this spot under 2 palm trees, and we'd spend hours there every Sunday afternoon. We were teaching them the game. They would say Illinois Avenue. And we'd say, no, the S is silent. They didn't understand that. And then sometimes they'd slip one of the $5 bills in their pocket and try to use it in a little shop in the village, but it's a pink $5 bill. So they would just get yelled at, and they never knew why. And we'd say, this is not real money. You can't take it. It's not going to help. So, but here's the thing. Monopoly, most of you have played. It teaches you a lesson about our society and what our society values. Let's be honest. We keep score in America based on the money that we have and the things that we own. That's how Monopoly works. You keep score in Monopoly by having the most money and by having the most houses and hotels. I realized that if I could get the orange property, St. James Place, Illinois Avenue, if I could get those, the orange properties, I could always bankrupt my brother because I could build houses and hotels for $100 a house. You know this. And he would land on my properties, and he would start to sweat. And then when he was losing, he would finally just flip the board and give up and run off back to the house. And he was mad because that's how life is. But that's how life is in the real world. We keep score by the things that we own and we possess. I want to remind you today that the bottom line belongs to God, that everything we own in life, the Bible keeps teaching us this principle. I have it on the screen here. Let's look at it together. That here's a thought that will change your view of things forever. Money and possessions are not mine. Everything I own belongs to God. I have a few. The Bible says this. Let me read this again. Money and possessions are not mine. Everything I own belongs to God. Guys, this is counterintuitive. This is countercultural because our society says, get the most you can. That's how we keep score in life. You'll have more power. You'll have more happiness. It's all about getting. There's scriptures over and over talk about this. Here's a few. Psalm 24, the earth is the Lord's and everything in it. Psalm 50, he owns the cattle on 1,000 hills. For the Lord is mine and all that is in it. Job 41, everything under heaven belongs to me. So the Bible keeps reminding us that we are simply God's asset managers. Malachi says this. He's talking to the Hebrew people. He's saying, you come to worship on the Sabbath, but you're not giving, you're not tithing, you're not letting go of the bottom line because you think it's yours, not God's. And so he says this, Malachi says, do not rob God. And you're sitting here this morning thinking, well, the Christians are nice people. They would not steal from God. Well, I'm going to tell you they do, okay? Because it happened to me in first grade. What happened is, speaking of Liberia where I grew up, there's very little money in the bush that's we're deep in the Sapo rainforest, very little money in circulation. So people would come to church without the exact amount that they wanted to give. And of course, they didn't have checking accounts or anything like that. So they would come in with $5 bills or one big $1 coins. And then when the offering plate came around, people would make change. You ever make change in church? Can I see the hands? Who make change? No, you're going to have people, the ushers will be chasing you, tackling you. You make change here. And that's why I put locks on the boxes, everybody. Anyway, but in Liberia, as the offering plate's going around, people are making change. Well, I'm in first grade. I'm seeing my friends make change. I'm thinking, this looks awesome. So one Sunday, my mother gives me a 50-cent piece. And I go to church, the offering plate's coming around, I'm looking, Mom, I drop it in, I make some 35 cents. 10 cents for God, 35 cents for me. I thought it was a good exchange. That's more than 10%. And so I gave him that 10 cents and put the rest in my pocket. But here's what first graders don't know, is that mothers have eyes in the back of their head. And I don't know how, but I get home, I thought my mother was looking the other way, and she says, Palmer, I saw you making change in the offering. I said, yeah, I needed to get some change. She says, no, you robbed God. You stole from God. You stole from the church. And I was like, I said, oh, really? She said, yeah, you got to take that back to the pastor now. So I had to make the walk of shame to the pastor's house and give him my 35 cents. And here's the thing, let's be honest. There's a lot of grown Christians who still do that, isn't there? Because we know that the Bible over and over reminds us, hey, God's asking for a tenth of what we have to give it back to him so that we can expand his kingdom work. But there's a lot of people that think, well, I'll tip God today, I'll drop a 10 spot in the offering plate, or I can give 2%, or I can give 5%, or I'll give more when I get out of debt. And it's just wrong. The Bible says, Malachi says this, he goes on to say, hey, just start giving what God asks you to, and he will pour out so much blessing on your family, so much blessing on your life. You won't even know what to do with it. Can I tell you, I've seen that happen over and over in people's lives. I have this principle on the screen, a second one, that God owns all things, and he simply assigned people management responsibilities over his assets. That's all you're doing. So the things that you do keep, you're just managing his assets. Jesus tells us this parable that we just read in Luke chapter 19 so that we see that it all belongs to him and he's given you something to manage. And the question is, how are you doing with it? And have you released all of what you own to God? Have you seen that? I want to challenge you with this thought. That the next big possession, the next big item that you purchase, the next big ticket item, can you try this? Say, God, this is yours. Or how about, can you look at the assets that you do have and say, God, this is all yours. You just got to show me how to use it. Because I think so often we purchase things and we own things and we have bank accounts and we think, they're mine, not God's. We hold on tightly. I learned a lesson from a college kid a number of years ago when I was a college pastor. I had flown to Denver to do a wedding in Boulder, Colorado. And the wedding was on Saturday, and I was trying to fly out early Sunday to make it back to my college ministry. And so after I performed the service, I realized I needed a ride to the airport at 5 in the morning. My flight left at 7. And so I started to ask people at the wedding, hey, can you give me a ride to the airport? I started with the father of the bride, and I thought, well, the father of the bride, I met him, we had this bonding, this bro connection, and so I asked the father of the bride, I said, hey, FOB, can you give me a ride to the airport to Denver tomorrow morning? He says, well, what time? I said, I need to leave at 5 a.m., my flight's at 7. He said, I'm busy. I'm like, who's busy at 5 in the morning, all right? He's sleeping. But he said he was busy. So now I started asking the groomsmen. They're all saying, oh, no, I'm not getting up. And they're just flat honest with me. These college kids weren't going to get up. I'm asking strangers I've never met before, hey, you're going to Boulder tomorrow? You're going to Denver tomorrow? Nobody. And this was before Uber and Lyft and a taxi. I called on a taxi. It was $100 and something. And I was like, I can't do that. And so finally, I went back to the little guest house they gave me to sleep in, and I knew there's another college kid coming in that night that was also sleeping there. So I put a note on his door, hey, help, can you give me a ride to the airport at 5 a.m.? I go to sleep. It's midnight. I don't know where this kid is. About 3 a.m., he barges in my room, and he wakes me up. He says, hey, I got your note here. He says, you need a ride to the airport at 5 in the morning? I said, yeah, what do you think? He says, well, here's what I think. He said, I have a pickup here. He said, last year I bought the pickup. And he said, when I bought the pickup, he said, before I drove off the lot in this new pickup, he said, I stopped and I prayed. And I said, God, this pickup is not my pickup. It's your pickup. And he said, so I've tried to live with this pickup, knowing that it's God's pickup, not mine. And so now you're here, a man of the cloth, asking me for a ride to the airport. He said, I have to give you a ride because this is God's pickup. I said, yes, it is. Giddy up. And so... And he said, listen, you want to go right now? I said, sure. So we left at 3 a.m. But isn't that refreshing for a college student to say, my possessions, that's the only thing the kid owns is God's. That's my challenge here. Is your bottom line God's bottom line? I have one final thought this morning, and it's this. To remind you that your heart follows the bottom line. Our heart has a way of following our possessions and our money. The things that we value in life, our heart tends to go after them. We think naturally that our money would follow our heart, maybe for a while. When you're young and in love, it will. I know that when I first met my future wife, Veronica, I was a sophomore in college. And I asked her out on a date, and she agreed to go to Disneyland with me on Saturday night. Local residents could go for it. It was like $30 a ticket just for the evening. And so I asked her to go, and she said yes. And so I knew this was a big date. In fact, I'd already told a friend of mine, this is who I'm going to marry. I only knew her name. I didn't know anything else about her. But I told him that because she was awesome, all right? And so to get ready for this date, I went down to Wells Fargo, and I withdrew everything I had in Wells Fargo. I had $350 in the bank. I took it all out, and I put it in my pocket because I thought, hey, man, I'm not going to be embarrassed by not having enough money tonight, just in case I got $350 in my pocket. And I felt like a big shot that night. I'm going to tell you right now. I took her out to a steak dinner first, and then we get to Disneyland, and she still says, I kept asking her, hey, you want a sweatshirt? You want a hoodie? You want a new outfit? I was doing anything to impress her because I had this big old fat wad of cash in my pocket. Well, fortunately, she said no to most of those things except for like the funnel cakes, all right? And so the next day, I put about $265 back in the bank. About 6 months later, I was even more in love. So I went back to Wells Fargo. I emptied my bank account again. And this time I went to a jewelry store. And with everything I owned, I bought a ring, a gold ring with a diamond on it. It wasn't that big, but it was a diamond, and that has to be worth something. 10 years later, by the way, I upgraded her. But I put everything I owned into that ring. Why? Because my money was following my heart. My treasure, my bottom line was following my heart. But Jesus says that condition doesn't last long, does it? He's right. Because very soon, our heart starts to follow the things that we treasure. So he says this. This is Matthew chapter 6, verse 19. Do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth where moths and dust corrupt, but store up treasure in heaven. Because where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. This is a very powerful line. Jesus' point is invest in eternal things. Invest in kingdom work because your heart will follow the things that you invest in. The problem in our culture and our society, the problem with the human condition is that possessions and bank accounts have a way of controlling us. Let's be honest. Possessions and bank accounts start to control us. I know it's true because it happened to me with a skill saw. So what happened is I had a circular saw, a Black & Decker saw. By the way, this is Tool and Gadget series because last week Pastor Scott Swanson talked about the Swanson Square. All right, today we're going to talk about circular saws. So I had this cheap Black & Decker circular saw that I bought right when we got married for like $29 at Home Depot. And then finally the motor burned out on it. I was so happy about that day because I had seen the skill saw. You seen that one with the 1L. And I knew that the professionals use the skill saw. So as soon as the thing blew up, I told my wife, I said, I gotta go to Lowe's. I gotta go right now. I gotta go buy this. Because all I could think about was getting that skill saw. So I drive down there and it was a pretty good investment. I buy the thing and I get back. I get back to my house and I realize I've got nothing to cut, okay? Let's be honest. Most guys have tools. We just don't have opportunity for those tools. And so I was sitting in my living room with this brand new skill saw thinking, what needs cutting around here? And I'm looking at my pool and I see this cement block wall, just like these walls here, just like most of our walls in Arizona. I've got a CMU wall behind my pool. I thought, man, that would look a lot better if it was made out of wood. Am I right? And so I'm picturing this mid-century modern wood, not yet, hang on, not yet, you're getting ahead of me, you're getting way ahead of me. All right, and so I'm picturing this wood wall, and so I think, yeah, maybe that's what I should do is go get some wood. And because if I put wood on the wall, I feel like we're in the Sequoias. You'll feel like you're in Portland or Seattle. It's going to be awesome. So I go back to Lowe's. Now it's a couple of $300 later. I've got 2x6s all loaded up and back at my house. But as I start to cut these things, and don't get me wrong, I'm using the Swanson Square, I'm cutting, and it's going great. But then as I go to put the wood on the wall, I realize I can't do it by myself. So I call my nephew over. And he lived a few streets over, and my nephew shows up. I said, all right, I'm giving him like a 20 spot, right? And he's half interested in the whole project. And he's holding the wood, and I'm screwing it in, and it's starting to take shape. And then after about 20 minutes, he stopped me, and he says, Palmer, he said, why are we doing this? And I said, what do you mean? I said, we're going to have this awesome wood wall. Can't you see it? And he goes, no. He said, but why are we doing this? He said, you already have a wall. You're building a wall on top of a wall. And I'm like, dude, just keep holding the wood. Just don't get all philosophical on me. So we keep building the wall and find it. We can put the picture up now. So this is the end result. And that's not too bad, is it? Put the next one up because I got a close-up. By the way, the wall I just was doing in front of the pool, and I thought, well, we need more, so we did 5 panels, but that's a wood wall. You can take it down now. So I was pretty proud of my work. I'm pretty proud of my skill saw. And then this last summer, we started to refurbish these houses next door, so I show up with my prized skill saw. Now, don't get me wrong, it's a plug-in saw. You need an extension cord and all that, but it's a beast. But I show up, and as we start working, Paul Gunther's got a Milwaukee cordless saw. Stop, just hold the phone right there. I was like, I didn't even know they made circular saws with batteries. He said, oh, yeah, all the professionals use Milwaukee, Palmer. What you got there? That's some kind of cheap piece of something you got. And then, so I'm watching him cut. He can walk all over with this thing. There's no cord. There's no chance of you cutting through the cord and killing yourself, too, and your family. And so I just got to tell you right now, I don't like my skill saw so much anymore. I need a Milwaukee saw. So I'm saving up. My birthday's November 1st. I'm hoping something might happen. Do you see how life is like that? One possession leads to more spending in the next possession. And it's this rut of never being satisfied, never having enough. And can I just say, remind you that your heart follows our treasure. Be very careful with what you treasure, because your treasure will begin to possess, your possessions will begin to possess you. Like Jesus said in verse 21, for where your treasure is, there your heart will be also. Like I said, I think we believe that our treasure will follow our heart. No, it's actually the opposite. So treasure eternal things. Treasure building the kingdom of heaven. Invest in growing the kingdom of heaven on earth. Live generously. Start seeing the lives that you can bless with even your small possessions. It doesn't take much. And I said earlier, where is your bottom line? Your bottom line is telling a story. Your bottom line is saying something about you. If you want to know what you value and treasure, look at your bottom line. Look at your Chase statement, your Wells Fargo statement. Look at your B of A statement. Look at your Visa statement. You'll see things that matter. You'll see rent. You'll see your mortgage. You'll see your groceries. But then you'll also see Target, Dunkin' Donuts, Target. And then you realize, did I really need, or Amazon. You'll see that. Some of you know, 5 hours a day on Amazon. Your heart follows those things. I talked about one last thought here. We're talking about monopoly, and I think monopoly teaches us another valuable lesson. You see, after I would bankrupt my brother. And after he would flip the board in anger, or if we didn't get there yet, my mother called us in for dinner. Monopoly always ends the same, doesn't it? Whether I win or Wallow or Klebo wins from the village next door, or my brother wins, the game ended the same. I had to take all the piles of money that I had in front of me, all my houses and hotels, and I had to pack them up and put them back in the box. I didn't get to take any of it with me. It wasn't worth a cent after the game was over. And life is like that, isn't it? We can spend all this time, all this energy acquiring, possessing, owning. But at the end of the day, at the end of this life, none of it goes with you. It all stays here. So Jesus says, invest wisely, invest in my kingdom, live generously, bless people. Look around every day. Who can I bless today? He says, that's the most fortunate position. He said, it is more blessed to give than to receive. He says, the most blessed position in life is to live generously, to share with others. It's not getting. The most blessed position is giving. Can I invite you, church, to start living that way? Would you stand? We're going to close with this great piece. Thank you for worshiping here today, church.